Danielle Smith delivered a compelling press conference that could significantly influence the future of Canada. Her speech outlined a bold vision for Alberta, aiming to create a fairer and more prosperous province while addressing long-standing grievances with the federal government. This announcement, which she termed the Alberta Accord, proposes a new framework for Alberta's relationship with Ottawa, emphasizing autonomy and resource management. Smith articulated a vision where Alberta's economic potential is fully realized, free from what she perceives as stifling federal overreach. The Premier's address was not just a recitation of policy proposals, but a passionate defense of Alberta's interests and a call to action for its citizens. Premier Smith's plan includes several critical demands aimed at reshaping Alberta's economic landscape. These demands reflect a deep-seated frustration with the current federal-provincial dynamic and a desire for Alberta to have greater control over its own destiny. The core tenets of the Alberta Accord are designed to address what Smith and many Albertans see as systemic imbalances in Canada's federal structure. One key element is guaranteed access to Pacific, Arctic, and Atlantic ports for Alberta's exports, determined by market demand rather than federal restrictions. Smith is advocating for a system where Alberta's goods can reach global markets without being hampered by federal regulations or political considerations. This is particularly important for Alberta's energy sector, which relies heavily on exports to drive economic growth. The Premier argues that the current system allows Ottawa to arbitrarily restrict access to markets, thereby harming Alberta's economy and undermining its potential. Another critical demand is an end to federal interference in provincial resource development, including the repeal of laws perceived as detrimental to Alberta's interests, such as Bill C-69, the Impact Assessment Act, and the oil tanker ban. Smith contends that these laws are overly burdensome and create unnecessary obstacles for resource development projects in Alberta. She argues that the federal government should not have the power to unilaterally block projects that are vital to Alberta's economy. The Premier believes that Alberta should have the autonomy to manage its own resources, subject to reasonable environmental regulations, without undue interference from Ottawa. The Accord also calls for a ban on the federal government imposing export taxes or restrictions without Alberta's consent, ensuring that provincial interests are prioritized. Smith argues that Alberta should not be subjected to federal policies that could harm its export industries without its explicit agreement. This demand is aimed at preventing Ottawa from using its regulatory powers to disadvantage Alberta's economy. The Premier believes that Alberta should have a veto over any federal policies that could negatively impact its exports. Furthermore, Smith demands equal per-capita federal transfers and equalization payments that match those received by provinces like Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia, challenging the current equalization system that many Albertans feel is unfair. She argues that Alberta contributes a disproportionate share of its wealth to the federal government, only to see it redistributed to other provinces, with little benefit to Alberta. The Premier believes that the equalization system should be reformed to ensure that Alberta receives a fairer share of federal transfers. These demands reflect a growing sentiment among Albertans who believe that the province has been disproportionately burdened by federal policies that do not align with its economic realities. Smith is tapping into this sentiment by advocating for greater autonomy and control over Alberta's resources and finances. In addition to the Accord, Smith announced the formation of the Alberta Next Panel, which she will chair alongside experts from various fields. This panel will engage with Albertans through town halls to discuss the province's future within Canada and explore strategies to protect Alberta from federal policies perceived as hostile. Notably, popular proposals from these discussions could be put to a referendum in 2026, allowing citizens to have a direct say in their governance. The Premier sees the Alberta Next Panel as a crucial mechanism for gathering public input and developing a consensus on the way forward for Alberta. Smith emphasized that while separation from Canada is not automatically on the ballot, she is open to including it if there is sufficient grassroots support, as demonstrated through the Citizens' Initiative Act. This statement underscores the Premier's willingness to consider all options for Alberta's future, including the possibility of independence. It also serves as a signal to Ottawa that Alberta is serious about its demands and is prepared to take drastic measures if necessary. Corey Morgan, a senior columnist and co-founder of the Alberta Independence Party, praised Smith's speech as a robust defense of Alberta's rights, likening it to the impactful rhetoric of former Premier Peter Lougheed. However, he cautioned that while support for independence is growing, it has not yet reached a majority. The timeline until 2026 allows for further organization and discussion among Albertans regarding their future. Morgan's perspective highlights the complex dynamics at play in Alberta's political landscape, with a significant portion of the population open to the idea of independence. Under the Clarity Act, a clear majority on a referendum question would require the federal government to negotiate Alberta's independence in good faith, similar to the situation Quebec faced in the 1995 referendum. This legal framework provides a potential pathway for Alberta to pursue independence if a majority of its citizens support the idea. This announcement comes at a time when Canada is navigating complex political dynamics, with Prime Minister Mark Carney leading the Liberal Party. Carney's government will need to respond to Smith's proposals, balancing Alberta's demands with national interests. How Carney navigates this delicate situation will be crucial in determining the future of federal-provincial relations in Canada. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has been vocal about the need for accountability and reform in federal policies, positioning himself as a champion for provincial rights. Poilievre's support for Alberta's demands could put pressure on the federal government to negotiate in good faith with Smith. Premier Smith's announcement marks a pivotal moment in Alberta's political landscape, potentially reshaping its relationship with the federal government. By advocating for greater autonomy and fairness, she is tapping into a growing desire among Albertans for a more equitable distribution of resources and decision-making power. As discussions unfold, the implications of the Alberta Accord and the Alberta Next Panel will be closely watched by both provincial and federal leaders. The outcome of these discussions will have far-reaching consequences for the future of Canada's federal system.